You're listening to another episode of Mr. Allard's Neighborhood. This is the place where you're entitled to Brad's opinion. And now for your host, Brad Allard.
Well, welcome back. We're here on a special show. We have District Attorney Dale Hanna, who has been our district attorney for how long now?
32 years.
Right. I mean, I've lived here since 1991, and that's the only district attorney I remember. But we're going to ask him a few questions about the campaign. And I had some questions sent to me. I said, here, ask him about this, ask him about that. I will be judicious in which questions I ask because
Sure.
we're not looking to throw bombs or nothing. But there are some important questions that voters want to know, and Mr. Hanna is more than glad to answer them. We're not going to be able to talk about pending cases. So if you're, I had a couple of questions about that, ask him about this case or that, and that can't happen. You know,
If it's a pending case, you ethically, an attorney cannot address it.
Well, you'd just be asking for a mistrial.
Well, and you just, by ethical standards of the state bar, you cannot talk about a pending case.
Most of it has to do with the function of the DA's office and things of that nature.
Sure.
But before we jump into that, I'd like to thank our sponsors for making all this available to the public. I bet you've been to our place at least once or twice in your life.
I have.
Yes.
I have. Our place is good food.
Yes, it is. Otto is a great community supporter, and you're from the Cleburne area
Yes,
mostly,
there
right?
is one in Cleburne.
Right.
And we patronize that regularly.
That's good. There's a Gina's Pizza, which is a local landmark here in Burleson.
Okay.
He just took it over and he's revamping it and all this, but it's been around for like 40 years. And
Well, the Our Place food is sure quality.
it sure enough is. And Otto's a really good employer and become a good friend over the last few years. Also, Wild Cigar and Culture. I don't know if you're a cigar smoker, but it's a place to give cigars or gifts or whatnot. It's over on the Standard. Everything. It's a really nice place to go. You can have a drink, have a cigar, watch the ball game in peace. It's not loud. It's not a sports bar really, but you can watch the game and be able to hear yourself think. So thank you, Chris and Nathan, for all you do for the community. Also, Tiffany and Nico is going to be on in about a month. We're going to talk about local life. Her magazine's out. It goes to 30,000 homes. It goes to a lot of retail establishments, and you go and you see them on the coffee table or on the counter or whatever else, and so it gets a lot of coverage. Also, as we speak now, as this live, we're having over at Southern Gym, we are having a bourbon and bling party. My wife works with this place. Is there a Mrs. Hanna?
There was, and she died a couple of years ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to.
No, it's all right. It's something you have to adjust to. But my wife died suddenly about 2 years and 3 months ago.
Well, I'm sorry. But they're having a party tonight of sorts where the husbands can go and have a sip and do some shopping for Valentine's. A lot of sales, a lot of stuff going on. So it's open till 7 if you're hearing me live. And like I said, my wife works there, so she's pretty excited. She likes working with jewelry. It's a hazard to the business. She comes home and said, "Oh, look at this picture and that picture." And we do have got to take care of some things, right?
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Also, thank you to Two Maids. This is a maid service. One of their biggest clients is a windmiller building, and so they do both large buildings. They do homes. I'm in a networking group, B&I, with this woman, Brenda Ramirez. She'll be on the show in about 2 weeks, and she'll talk about what they do. And what's so great about Two Maids is that they'll come and clean your house, and you rate them, and the charge will be based on the rating. So obviously, you're going to have some motivated people. So 817-764-0733 or twomaidscleaning.com/Burleson. Also, here's another local business, All Pro Roofing, John Williams, 817-734-2756. Come check out your roof. He'll do it for nothing. Tell you what you need to know. He'll tell you your roof is good. He'll tell you if it needs repairs and tell you if it needs replacing. He's not going to upsell you. He's going to tell you what it is. And so thank you, John, for what you provide. And another Burleson institution, Camco Mortgage Lending. Sammy Campbell and Candy Gale have been doing this for since like 2002, I believe. So, a little over 20 years. I've used them twice myself in other spots, but now they have their own business. Sammy and Candy are at the B&G building at the south end of that complex on the third floor. You can reach them at 817-778-4592, or Candy is at 817-925-2661, and they'll tell you what's going on with the rates, which we know are nuts. So they can help you get to the wilderness. Okay, let's talk to Mr. Hanna here. You and I have a little bit of common background. You went to Baylor Law, is that right?
I did.
Where'd you go to undergraduate?
Went to UTA and drove back and forth primarily from Cleburne to UTA and commuted, and then went off to Baylor Law School.
I did it backwards. I went to Baylor undergraduate, and then I went to UTA for my teaching material and certificate and my master's degree.
Okay.
So I guess we have some commonality. Of course, I don't know when's the last time you've been on either campus, but boy, they're a lot different than when we went to school there.
They are a lot different than they used to be.
Yeah.
But I am proud to have gone to Baylor Law School. And likewise UTA.
The thing about UTA I liked about it is, I really had some good professors there.
Oh, yes.
And really, it was a good facility, but they really upgraded it quite a bit.
Oh, it's a big institution.
Yeah.
I don't know how many students are there, but I'm guesstimating 30,000.
Close.
Yeah.
I believe it's like between 25 to 30.
Yeah.
As far as Baylor, it's now like 15 for undergrad, which that's twice as big as when I went there. So when you left Baylor Law School, did you go into private practice?
No, I never have been in private practice, so to speak. Graduated in 1973 from Baylor Law School and went to work as an assistant city attorney for the city of Arlington. Began prosecuting traffic tickets.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Well, obviously everybody coming out of law school think that's way beneath them. They need to go directly to the top, but it turns out that's the best thing that ever happened to me because I learned how to try lawsuits, how to try a case. So I did that for about a year, and then the city attorney in Arlington resigned, and they appointed me city attorney for a while. After that, I went to work for the Tarrant County District Attorney's Office and spent 5 years up there as an assistant DA for the longtime DA up there, Tim Curry. Spent 5 years up there, and then came to Johnson County and began working as an assistant district attorney and an assistant county attorney, and did that for 4 years. In 1984, they asked me to be appointed and run for the county attorney's position. I ran for that unopposed in 1984 in Johnson County and was elected because there was no opposition. Ran for that again in 1988 and again was elected, no opposition. That job involves prosecuting juvenile offenders, CPS cases, and misdemeanor crimes, as well as advising the county on civil matters. So did that for 8 years, from 84 to 92. In 1992, I ran for district attorney and was elected, and that's when my 32 years began as district attorney.
Wow, that is a long tenure. How many times have you been opposed in an election?
In 1992, I ran against the incumbent and won. And in 2000, I had an opponent in the Republican primary, and I won that race. But that's the only two contested races. The last one, like as I said, is in 2000.
Well, this is a pretty Republican
it is now.
county.
It is now.
Well, it's never been a liberal county. I mean,
no.
It may have a different name to it back in the 70s. It may have been Democrat, but it was just as conservative then, I would imagine, as it
that's
is now.
exactly right. I have been criticized for having ran as a Democrat back in the 80s. I was unopposed, but still been criticized for that. But not everybody, majority of people in Texas were Democrats back in the 80s.
Right.
And it was a conservative party back then, but things have changed.
Really? So when did you formally switch to the Republicans?
In 2000.
In 2000. Okay. And
in fact, Bill Moore and I, the present county attorney, switched at the same time at the urging of some Republican leaders in the county. And my opinion is we helped kind of turn the tide to make this county what it is today, which is a Republican stronghold.
It very much is.
It is.
Because I don't know of any Democrats that are running for countywide seats.
If there are, I don't know of them, Brad.
Right. I think the last one is a county commissioner race, and that's
and he lost that, and that's been I don't know, 20 years. I don't know, 15 years.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it has.
As long as I've lived here, it's always been, Burleson's known as a conservative community.
Absolutely.
Johnson County
is. And Somervell County is.
Right. So in your tenure, what have you stressed the most as a district attorney? I mean, what type of crime, what type of situation have you thought takes the most attention?
You really can't single that out. When you're in this job, you're looking at major drug cases, you're looking at major homicide cases, you're looking at major sexual abuse of children cases, you're looking at intoxication manslaughter cases. You really can't single one out. I would simply say that drugs for the past probably 20 years has been a major focus of our efforts. That's not to diminish the sexual abuse of children cases and everything else that goes with it, but drugs right now are probably 75% of our docket. And when I say drugs, I mean drug cases and drug-related cases, because so many cases are influenced by drug activity, whether they be burglaries, whether they be fraudulent use of identifying information, everything that, and thefts, everything that goes with it is affected by drug activity. So the focus right now, drugs, they are the driving factor in a lot of crimes. And in that, I include alcohol, because we've had some horrible alcohol-related deaths, was intoxication manslaughter, intoxication assault cases.
Now, in your office, though, do you have to prioritize one type of activity over another?
You prioritize them based on the seriousness of the offense. You prioritize a murder case over a possession under a gram of meth, depending on what the situation is. That murder case has got to take priority, and you have to prioritize those cases. If somebody tells you you can give a maximum sentence on everybody that comes through that criminal justice system, they are living in a dream world, because that's not reality.
I was going to ask you about that later in the show, about your ability to affect the sentence or whatnot. But what I'm hearing is that the drug cases have always been an issue. First, it was like meth labs and whatnot. Now we have fentanyl from the border.
That's right.
And things of that nature. Is that what's happening in our county?
Yeah, used to there was a lot of meth labs in our county. That has changed to where drugs are coming across the border, the border is just an absolute nightmare for law enforcement and for all the citizens of Texas. That's an open border, and that is not going to be solved until the problem in Washington, D.C. is solved, and they close that border.
That open border has caused more conflict in our country than I think than an issue in our last 20 years.
I tend to agree with that.
Because not just for us here in America, but also just there are problems coming across that border.
There's all kinds.
And we were dreaming if we think we can just say, well, that's Eagle Pass's problem.
That is not. It's everybody's problem. And as New York and some of these cities in the north are finding out, it's their problem too.
My opinion of Mr. Abbott is there's some things I wish were different, but I don't have a problem with him making the sanctuary cities live up to their words.
Well, how else are they going to be confronted with the problem that Texas is confronted with? We have many, many criminal defendants in jail presently who have committed crimes, and then it turns out when they are booked into the jail, they are interviewed by the immigration authorities and determined to be illegal. And when that happens, a hold is put on them to where they cannot bond out until they have completed their sentence for whatever crime it is. But there is more and more of those, and that is more and more of a problem.
Here in Johnson County?
Absolutely.
Okay. See, and I think sometimes we don't really dial in on the fact that what we're seeing on the news is not somebody else's problem.
Oh, it's here. It's here. Now, it's not as severe as it is in South Texas.
Well, yeah.
But we have a number of illegals in jail who have committed felony crimes, and we prosecute those offenders, And once they have completed their sentence in the penitentiary, they are deported to Mexico or wherever they came from.
Right. Because of this influx of criminal activity with drugs, has it caused us to not be able to focus on other areas of crime? Because one of the things I heard in the comments was that, there's some cases that are kind of being held up because there's just not enough staff to deal with it because you're having to deal with drug cases all the time.
Well, we are dealing with drug cases, and those are 75% of our docket. They are a major determining factor on a lot of other cases. But we've come out of this thing called COVID, and the docket's backed up substantially during COVID because there was very few, if any, live court appearances. Now, when there's not any live court appearances, nothing gets done, no cases get moved through the system, and the things back up, and those dockets backed up. We are about to get caught up from the COVID. Now, as far as saying, well, this kind of case has taken a second chair to these other ones, not really. You can't generalize it that way. Drug cases are always big, but there's other cases, homicides, sexual abuse of children, burglary cases, intoxication, manslaughter cases. You can't really say one case is taking priority over another one. The courts primarily look at, if somebody's in jail, they try to push that case first. If it's a jail case, it takes priority. Sexual abuse of children cases take priority, especially when they're in jail. But there is a number of factors that may affect when those cases go to trial.
Well, that was some of the commentary that I was asked to present was that, because of the drug issues or other types of cases like DUI or something like that may not get as much attention as some people would like.
Well, talking about DUIs for a second.
Okay.
First offense DWI in Texas is a misdemeanor. It's handled by the county attorney's office, Bill Moore. Second offense is a misdemeanor, handled by the county attorney's office. Only the third offense in Texas is a felony. And in that regard, you have some intoxication assault cases and intoxication manslaughter cases. Again, it gets back to, are they in jail? Is it going to be a trial? Is it going to be a plea? There are all these factors you have to look at in making a determination.
Yes, sir. And one of the other comments was that we are understaffed.
Well, let me tell you about being understaffed.
Okay.
There are about 300 openings in the state of Texas for felony prosecutors. Every jurisdiction has openings. I think Tarrant County has 10.
Why is that, by the way?
Look at it, too. Many police departments have openings.
Yes. I'm just saying, why not just Johnson County, but why are so many other counties short of prosecuting attorneys?
And, I don't know I know the answer to that, but I know it is countrywide, not just statewide. Now, maybe it's salaries. The salaries are getting better. It may be that young lawyers do not want to be in the criminal justice system. It is a pressure system. You have to be right on these cases. You have to have skills to try these cases, especially the felonies. And a lot of people do not want to live with that pressure and massive dockets and trying to do more with less.
When I was an undergraduate at Baylor, I had 4 friends that went to Baylor Law School. All 4 of them joined various prosecuting counties as prosecuting attorneys. That seemed at that time to be the best path to get a career. Is it not anymore?
Not so much. Well, when I got out, you went to a prosecutor's office to learn how to try a case and developed your trial skills. And then you went on to something else, either in family law or civil law or whatever. When I got out, I determined pretty early on that I did not want to use what skills I had to stop the criminal justice system. I wanted to use my efforts to try to see that justice was done and justice was served. I have never been a defense attorney. I have always been a prosecuting attorney and have wanted to use my skills to the best of my ability to see that justice was done. And that's the career path I have taken. You know, I could have gotten out into private practice years ago, but I just did not like the feel of being a defense attorney where I was going to go into court and defend somebody that, from all the evidence, was just as guilty as they could be.
Right.
I didn't feel good about that. For that reason, I have stayed as a prosecuting attorney for my entire career because I thought that's what I was supposed to be doing.
So as far as Johnson County is concerned, though, is the understaffing issue one of the reasons why some cases take longer than others to get to court?
Perhaps, but not really.
Okay.
The dockets are big dockets. We've got 3 district courts in Johnson County. We may need another one because we are seeing an influx of cases. We're seeing an influx of population. The more people you have, the more crime you're going to have. The more crime you have, the more drugs you're going to have. And then we've got the proliferation of drugs, more and more different kinds of drugs. And those affect dockets, and you try to do the best you can with what you've got.
What now? When I was doing a little research for this show, it became quite apparent that you've really focused quite a bit on drug enforcement.
Sure.
Are there other areas of Johnson County crime in Johnson County that are also maybe rising it to a concernable level?
Drugs is the engine, so to speak, that drives the whole criminal justice system. There are other cases, sexual abuse of children cases. We have a child advocacy center in Johnson County in Cleveland that does an excellent job.
I have had Tammy King on here a couple of times.
Tammy does an excellent job.
Yes, she does.
I've got 2 great investigators in my office, both of which have 20 years of experience and 30 years of experience. We send those out to every interview at the Child Advocacy Center to listen to that interview behind a mirror where the child is not aware that they're there, but to listen to that interview and see what we need to do to make that case and to make it better. That organization is highly effective.
Yes, it is. I mean, I've mentioned, I had Tammy on before. Very impressed with her. I had her predecessor on when we were still a brand new show 4 years ago. So I've always kind of had kept tabs on them.
Well, and Tammy, as you say, does a great job. That's a calling to see the right thing is done and to handle those children with kid gloves, but to still make sure that the evidence is there that will allow us to prosecute those cases. Tammy is a big supporter of mine, and I'm proud of that.
I believe her husband is also.
He is. Adam King is the sheriff of Johnson County. He's in his 2nd term. He's a supporter. Before that, he was the commander of the Stop Narcotics Task Force, which I'm the chairman of that board of directors. Adam did a great job as the commander of the task force for years and is doing a great job as the sheriff of Johnson County. And in that regard, Bob Alford, prior sheriff of Johnson County, he's a big supporter of mine. He was also a commander of the task force, did a great job. And we have a commander now, Larry Sparks, who is doing an excellent job with the Stop Narcotics Task Force. But we're often talking about drugs.
Right.
But again, drugs are 75% of the docket.
Right, like you mentioned, it sounds like that's taking up all your time.
It takes a lot. It sure does. But we've got 3 district courts. We've got 2 prosecutors in each court. I would love to have 3 prosecutors in each court. But again, you're talking about money. And you're talking about finding the qualified, experienced people to be in those courts and to deal with these major crimes.
Is it a budget issue, really, or is it just the type of job that it is?
It's probably all 3.
Okay.
It's probably a budget issue to some degrees, but the salaries are getting better. It's also the pressure involved and whether people want to do this. And it's also a shortage of people who want to get into this.
Well, it sounds like from all the stuff I looked into it, it sounds like, we're just barely hanging on sometimes, because the influx from wherever they come from. And also, today I had on my show this morning with Colin Gregory and Joe Byram, we're talking about social media related crime. By the way,
there is sure some of that, and the way that comes in is solicitation of minors.
right. We spent a great deal of the show talking about that and about grooming and also talking about. I'm going to take a little commercial here, guys. If that's a show y'all need to see, because I was astounded. I'm a former school teacher, and I thought I knew something about it, and I was astounded just how much comes at our children from social media. Do y'all investigate those kind of cases?
Well, a lot of times, and what's related to that too is child pornography cases. Those things are increasing by a large percentage. Sometimes those are related. Solicitation of minors by offenders. If somebody thinks that the mores of society are not changing to where used to a 18-year-old was certain conduct, if you think it's not getting younger, it is getting younger.
Oh, it is.
If somebody says, well, it's not getting young, it is getting younger. Of course. It absolutely is. And their habits are getting younger. And you've got to look at that and decide what's appropriate when they are involved.
Well, my last 4 or 5 years at BISD, the kids are more and more dialed in on social media.
Exactly.
And it was an annoyance to me, but I did not know just how dangerous it was.
It is dangerous.
And, we kept a pretty close monitor on my 2 children.
Sure.
But not everybody does.
Sure.
And I just wonder if that's something that's coming across your desk a lot more often.
Well, it does. There is a organization called ICAC that when they get a child pornography hit, they notify the local authorities down here, and our local authorities run with it. Go get a search warrant, seize those computers, seize those cell phones, and we've got several of those cases right now, and those cases are horrible. You can't describe how bad those things are.
I try not to think about it.
I do too.
And I can imagine that's one reason why it may be tough to be a prosecutor.
It can take a toll on you, but I'll tell you what keeps you grounded. You didn't ask this, but I am a God-fearing, Bible-believing
Field Street, right? Baptist Church, right?
Church attending. That keeps you grounded to where you can get up and go the next day knowing that somebody is in charge much bigger than we are. And that grounding lets you keep going in the face of overwhelming numbers of cases and horrible cases, whether they be child pornography, whether they be murder, whether they be sexual abuse of children.
I would find it to be very difficult without that grounding.
Oh, you're absolutely true.
When I was, when we first had a conversation, it was like, I think you were on the way home from church, actually, on a Sunday afternoon.
It was Sunday afternoon. I had just left the 11 o'clock service at Field Street, was driving down the road, and I got that text message. So,
yeah.
But it keeps you grounded, and that's about all that. And there's a lot of prayer involved on these decisions.
Right. Well, see, our church starts at 10:30, so we can beat the Methodist.
Well, there you go. There you go.
So we don't want them taking all the tables.
No, I understand.
Yeah, but no, I would imagine without that, it'd be very difficult to just rely on your own power and strength, because that's got to sometimes you might. I guess what I would see if I were a prosecuting attorney, all of these cases coming in, is like, why can't people just behave? Give us a week off from crime, but it didn't. Crime is 24/7, 365, isn't it?
The good thing is I've got some good assistants. They do a good job. I've got a great support staff. That office consists of about 25 people, 14 lawyers, the rest support staff. They are a bunch of dedicated people that want to see the right thing done on these cases, and they work hard. And that gives you confidence, that gives you encouragement, and that spiritual thing is a big deal. It is a big deal. Being a prosecuting attorney is a little bit, you got to be called to do it.
Exactly.
It's not just you just walk in the street and say, okay, I think I'll do this. You got to have a desire to see the right thing happen on these cases.
Yes. Another thing is, as our society grows, it gets bigger, it gets more complex, has the office been able to keep up with the technology?
Well, let's talk about technology. I've been criticized for that, but last March, about a year ago, the county entered into a contract with a business called Somervell. It's a computer company.
Mm-hmm.
They are going to put all of the county offices, the county school districts, the courthouse on the same platform. That's in the process. That'll probably be done about October. Anybody except a department head would not know that, but that's been in the works for some time. Bill Moore knew about it, the county attorney. That contract is going forth. The county had some federal funds coming out of COVID. We call them ARPA funds. They used that to get this contract with this computer company, and that's in the hopper. When that happens, the county attorney's office, the district attorney's office, the sheriff's department, all of the school districts and all of the police departments in the entire county will be on the same platform. That's going to allow them to communicate more efficiently, and that's going to allow for these cases to be filed electronically, and that's coming.
Well, I do some contract work for a curriculum design company, and I find the new technology a bit overwhelming. How often do y'all have to keep up with the new technologies and have to be taught in it, be trained in it? Because I know my learning curve is steep on some of this stuff.
The support staff stays on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 3 secretaries or 3 administrative assistants and 2 secretaries about 20 feet from my office.
Mm-hmm.
I need information, and I need it quick. And I've got those ladies, I say girls.
Our generation.
Yes, but they're working on something all the time. And a lot of times I'm doing 2 or 3 things at once. You talk about multitasking.
Mm-hmm.
When you're the elected district attorney, you multitask. You're asking about Joe Jones. Where is he? Is he on parole? Does there a hold on him from another county? Does he have any bond violations? And then you're asking about Sue Smith over here, same situation. And you've got 2 or 3 people looking for information at the same time and giving you information to help you make decisions on these cases.
Well, I just wonder, for me, I could use some training. And does the district attorney's office provide training for the new technologies?
It does. And I've been criticized for that, but we're in good shape.
When you say criticize, what are they criticizing you about?
Well, because I don't have a computer on my desk. I've got 3 ladies right outside my office, and they tell me what I need to know, and I am able to absorb that information quickly. But this new system that's coming on in October, I'm looking forward to that because that's going to be a help.
Well, that's good because, if you're not up to speed on technology, you're going to be left behind very, very quickly. It's really it's been a struggle for me personally, but there you are.
If you think technology is going to solve all the problems, it's not going to solve all the problems. It's not going to solve the crime problems. We talked about the border. That's a whole nother issue.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about people coming into the system, and I've seen an influx of cases of adult parents being assaulted by their adult children. Seen a lot of mental cases,
like elder abuse, I believe is what they call it.
It is, but it's with their own child,
mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of those cases coming forth, which we used to never see,
mm-hmm.
and those are difficult cases to deal with because you've got a parent who has been injured, you've got an adult child that has injured them, either drugs or alcohol is involved. The adult parent does not want that person to go to the jail, to the pen.
Right.
That's a natural thing for a parent.
Mm-hmm.
They think, they'll get better. Well, what do you do with that case? What would you do, Brad, with that case? Where the adult parent does not want them, they don't want them going to the pen.
Particularly on something that may leave a lasting record.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with that?
I don't know.
Difficult decisions. Mm-hmm. And somebody thinks, being district attorney, you just walk in there and everything comes easy. experience is a big deal.
So you've had to make a lot of decisions.
Oh, absolutely. You make those about every 10 minutes.
Every 10 minutes, okay.
You do. Oh, what do you do with that?
So, we asked you this a little bit earlier. Maybe I needed more clarification. You were sitting at your desk. You had a dozen cases. Mm-hmm. You can only take 3 or 4 that day or whatever. How do you prioritize them?
You look at what the offense is. Mm-hmm. When I sit down and I evaluate every one of those cases that come into that office, me personally, you look at different factors. What's the offense? Is it a low-level drug case? Is it a violent crime? You look at what's their record. Where have they been in the past? Mm-hmm. You look at their age. You look at what the victim wants to see happen. And you look at what recommendation do I need to make to keep this county and this district safe.
I know certain crimes are probably more heinous or more dangerous than others, but there's probably a lot of them that are maybe at the same level of seriousness. And you're just going to have to choose between which cases go because of staffing issues or other issues.
You look at those drug cases, you see a young offender that's off into the drug culture, you may need to send them to drug and alcohol rehab. And you say, well, you're not a judge, you mean send them. We make a punishment recommendation on every one of those cases.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at in a minute about how much influence you'd have on that kind of thing. But
tell you exactly. Okay. Every case we see.
Okay, so when the judge makes a sentence, is it almost always based on your recommendation, or does it?
I'd say about 98% of the time it is.
Okay.
Now, we get into court, and all these defendants have a defense attorney, either hired or appointed. They all have their own attorney. Mm-hmm. If they bring us a new piece of information and we need to evaluate what our recommendation is, we'll take a second look at it. Mm-hmm. 98% of those cases, though, are disposed of by an agreed plea accepting that recommendsion.
Do you get criticized for that sometimes?
But that's the case in every district attorney's office in the entire country.
Well, I was just wondering sometimes if the judges just did their own thing or they basically followed your recommendation.
I would say most of the time they follow the recommendations because we have information that they don't have.
Right.
We have their record. We have the facts of the offense. And they don't have that if it's not a full-blown trial.
I see. I just was wondering how much criticism you get for that, though, because I'm sure there's going to be some that are going to be very upset that this guy didn't get 20 to life for something that maybe didn't deserve that. Maybe.
Well, what you try to do is you try to communicate with the victims. Mm-hmm. We have an excellent victim assistance coordinator who does a great job. Mm-hmm. She gets involved before the case goes to a grand jury for an indictment. After the grand jury indicts that case, it's assigned to one of these 3 district courts, and then the assistant DAs in that court get involved and walk those victims through the system. Before that case is pled, the assistant district attorneys communicate with those victims to say, this is what we're dealing with. This is what we're looking at. Give us your feelings on this thing.
Mm-hmm. So how would you characterize the communication between the district attorney's office and, say, people involved in this process, either as a victim, as a plaintiff, or a defendant, maybe?
Well, we don't communicate with defendants. The only communication we have with defendants is through their defense lawyer.
Right.
Now, we do communicate with the victims to say, based on our experience, this is what we think. Mm-hmm. And they get involved and say, well, yes or no.
Does it change your recommendation based on their response?
For instance, say you have a child who has been victimized, but the parents, when you communicate with them, say, I'm not going to let you put my child on that witness stand. Mm-hmm. It's going to be detrimental to my child. Well, that takes a difficult turn because you got to make a decision. What do you do with it then? Mm-hmm. And a child has to testify in court on these cases. If somebody says they don't ever have to testify because they've already been to the CAC, that's not true.
Right.
They have to testify. If a parent says, I'm not going to let my child go through a trial, I'm not going to do it because it's going to be harmful to them, then we have to make a decision on what can we do with that case. Those are difficult decisions, not easy decisions at all. And many times the victims in these cases do not want to proceed with these cases.
I had experienced that as a teacher because
Mm-hmm.
as you probably know, that a teacher is obligated to report child abuse.
Yes, absolutely.
And to, take it to school administration,
Yeah.
and then they'll go to CPS. And I had a couple of occasions, more than a couple, I'd say half a dozen, over my tenure. The kids said, "No, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to do this, and I don't get my dad in trouble or my mother in trouble or whatever else."
Yeah.
And it's like I don't have an option.
But those cases go to CPS first,
Right.
Child Protective Services 1st, and if the evidence warrants it, then it comes to us, and we take the case and go with it. Now, if there's physical evidence, we can do something with that.
Yeah. Would you prosecute a case even over the wishes of the victim?
It depends on what the case is. If it's a sexual abuse of a child and we have evidence that we can make that case, yes. If you have a family violence case, perhaps, a dust-up occurs between the boyfriend, girlfriend, dating, living together, whatever you want to call it, a husband, wife, maybe there's alcohol involved, maybe there's drugs involved. If the police department goes out there and there's some evidence of family violence having occurred, somebody's going to jail.
Okay.
Now, the next morning, perhaps the person who didn't go to jail says, I didn't really tell the police the entire truth, and this was a lot of my fault, and I really don't want him going to the penitentiary. I really don't want him put on probation. I really don't want him prosecuted. And maybe they've got a couple of children. Well, what do you do with that case?
It's interesting you bring that up because last month I had Colin Gregory and Stephanie Beard. Are you aware of those two? Stephanie Beard runs the Victim Assistance Program for Burleson PD.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Okay, and we were talking about it, and they encounter this problem a lot where there's second thoughts or regrets maybe that, okay, and I don't want my husband or my wife to, go through the criminal process. And I just wondered how often that really does happen.
It happens a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that I agree with. I knew
it happens a lot.
more than I thought it did.
Yeah, and if you've got physical injuries where you've got pictures that this is what happened, and if you've got some kind of a statement that they made, this is what happened, and you can make that case, fine. But if you don't, and the only one in the courtroom that's wanting a conviction is the prosecutor because the victim doesn't, she doesn't want to be there. And sometimes they'll say, I'm not going to testify, period. Well, that's left you with few options. Then you have to consider what's going to happen to those kids that are involved.
I always thought in these kind of domestic abuse cases, the abused spouse would, want something to be done. But I found out over the years that's more often than not, it's not quite that simple.
It's not that simple, and I've been criticized for that. But you have to look at the big picture. You have to look at what's going to be the impact on this family. It's just not as simple. It's not black and white. You've got to make a decision on what's to be done with that. Is them having been arrested and going to jail and bonding out, is that going to jerk them back into reality, into the middle of the road and where they can be a good citizen? Sometimes yes and sometimes no.
Well, when I was asking for questions for this show, they kind of went on two tracks. One was we've kind of discussed about the understaffing issue, and the other one was about, okay, we're so focused on a type of crime that the other crimes aren't being addressed. I think you've explained that, but I'll let you say in your words how you would.
Every one of those cases has got to be looked at individually, and you've got to look at the impact on the entire situation. If you've got an abused husband or wife, doesn't make any difference, who comes in the next morning and says, I don't want to prosecute this case, I'm not going to come down there and testify.
Well,
you're left with few options.
Like I've said, I've had a couple of experiences as a teacher where I couldn't get involved to telling the young person what to do, but they were so afraid of getting their mom or dad, whoever is in trouble, that kind of thing. And it was... I'm like, this is going to happen again.
It is. Now, let me back up. A situation where you've got a child that is injured and abused, and we've got evidence to show it, that's a different situation. What I'm talking about is two spouses fighting and fussing, or two live-in together fighting and fussing. or two boyfriend and girlfriend dating relationships fighting and fussing. That's what I'm really addressing, because we see a lot of what we call non-prosecution affidavits, where they come in and say, I do not want to prosecute this. I want to try this again, and I'm not going to testify if this thing goes forward. You have to make a hard decision on what do you do with that. Are you doing more harm than good by trying to proceed? And then you've got no evidence if that victim is not going to testify.
You know, you may not know this, but I teach a Texas government class at Hill College.
Okay.
And I'm just kind of curious about y'all, the county's relationship, y'all's relationship with statewide and maybe national law enforcement. You know, I'm sure y'all have a lot of connections there, but the Texas Rangers or the Highway Patrol, whatever it is.
Yeah, the Texas Rangers, the Highway Patrol, they all bring cases to our office. They're felony cases, as well as the Sheriff's Department, as well as the Stop Narcotics Task Force, as well as all of the local police departments. And each one of those cases has to be evaluated to see if the evidence is there and does it warrant going forth with it.
You know, one of the things I also heard was that violence against police officers is rising. Yeah. Has this been your experience also?
I think it is. You need to probably, some of it is real serious violence, and some of it is not so much. Police officers have a difficult job, you know, and you've got to look at each one of those cases individually to figure out what needs to happen to it. And you get back to looking at what's the offender's record? Have they done this before? And you know, the big thing the district attorney does is use his experience to, what is a jury going to do with this? Is a jury going to do something with this when we get it in court? And that comes only from experience. Are we going to be able to get a conviction? Is the jury going to probate that case, or are they not? You have to use your experience to determine what needs to happen on that.
You know, in your position, and you've been there a long time, and you've made a lot of relationships and contacts over the years, you find it difficult maybe to deal with somebody as a defendant maybe that you know personally? Well,
I was born and raised in Cleveland.
Okay.
Been there all my life.
Right, and you've been there so long, you have to know a lot of people.
No, when a situation like that comes across, I can recuse our office and have somebody else prosecute it.
Like whom?
Like an attorney general.
Okay.
They sent some people up here to prosecute a case over in Somervell County here about a month ago. You can recuse on those cases, and luckily, I have not had to prosecute somebody I knew well. Now, just because you know them does not keep you from saying, this is what ought to happen. We're going forth with the case.
Well, I would imagine you don't run with that crowd.
No, you don't.
You don't. You personally would not be hanging around somebody that's likely to end up in your office. But still, I would imagine, this is it's for all the growth we've had, we're still kind of a small community in a sense.
The good thing is this district, Johnson County and Somervell County, has a great reputation.
That's a weird question. I want to ask you, Somervell County does not have its own district attorney?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Too small?
Probably too small.
Okay.
We go over there and prosecute those cases. We're usually over there 2 or 3 times a month.
Okay.
They have their own county attorney. We're over there 2 or 3 times a month. We try cases over there. Both of my investigators, who I depend on heavily, live over there. They give me an update on everything that's going on over there. And they don't have their own district attorney. To get that changed is not something that we do locally. That's in Austin with the legislature. We don't have anything to do with that. That's a situation where state law through the legislature would have to establish it. But when you do that, you're talking about money.
Right.
And at the present time, we're able to keep that situation under control to prosecute those cases effectively.
One of the reasons, among others, that I would not want to be an attorney, particularly a prosecutor, is I don't know if I would have the wherewithal to go prosecute somebody I know. or somebody I grew up with, or somebody familiar with in the community. Do you have? I guess you have to have somebody in your life to kind of bounce that off of it and have those kind of
when
things.
that happens, I may hand that case off to an assistant and say, go do what you want to do with it. I'm through. I'm out of it. I'm not going to have anything to do with it because I know this person or I had this. Maybe I went to high school with them, whatever it is. I hand that case off and say, you do with it what you want, what you think needs to be done.
Well, that's good to hear. I didn't expect anything else, but it just that's to me, I would think one of the harder parts of any job, an elected official, is telling people that telling people no that you've known for a long time, or having to do your job. It is like a police officer giving a ticket to somebody they've known all their life, and they don't want to really do it, but that's their job, and there you are. Well,
you hand that case off to one of the trial lawyers in one of those courts and say, try the case. Or you make whatever punishment recommendation you want to make. And the big scheme of things, if they don't accept that punishment recommendation, they have an option to either go to a trial before a judge or a jury and let them decide the issue.
Well, in all transparency, your opponent will be on my show in about 10 days, and I'm going to ask him these questions.
Sure.
And and so try to be a fair broker between you and Mr. Good. I had Mr. Good on about 10 days ago, and the show was fine. There's no bombs thrown. It wasn't a lot of controversy from it. It was a pretty genial conversation. But this is a new territory for you, sir. I mean, you haven't had an election in a long time. I mean, how do you enjoy this? I don't think I'd enjoy a political campaign.
It's good to get out and you have people supporting you, and that's encouraging. You have these local officials, sheriffs and county attorneys and commissioners that support you. You have people say good things about you. The commander of the task force made a speech last fall that said he thought we had the best prosecution in the entire state right here as far as handing down stiff sentences. Is it pleasurable to get out and campaign and you have people criticizing you for doing this and
particularly
doing that?
in the era of social media? Yes.
Yeah. It's probably not pleasant, but that's our system.
Right.
If somebody thinks they can, if the electorate thinks that somebody can do a better job, fine.
Well, I'll be asking Mr. Good these questions also, just as a matter of fairness.
Sure.
And
I'm sure he's going to have an entirely different take on it. It's interesting that when you're running for office against somebody, you're not going to come in and say they are doing a great job. It's not going to happen.
He wasn't personally insulting. I'll put it that way. I mean, his criticisms were based on the issues.
Sure.
And it was an appropriate conversation. I'll put it that way. So that's the way I don't mind having these kind of conversations. Leave the personal stuff out.
No, I agree with that.
And we've had some elbows thrown in some of our local elections, and I hope we don't go down that road for our county ones. I don't think we'll have it this spring because it looks like it's going to be an appropriate election. I've been teaching government all my life, but it still bothers me to see some of these haymakers that are thrown at each other, and they sometimes land on the wrong people. They land on family or friends, and it's just it doesn't. I'm glad so far from what I can see, this so far has been an appropriate competition.
Yeah, I'm not mad at anybody. I think we've done a good job for the past 32 years.
Well, we're almost out of time, but I want you to have the last word. You could look into that particular camera if you want to use this as a clip.
Oh, that's fine.
I offered that to Mr. Good as well, and so you can say whatever you want until you're done talking.
Well, that's fine. The big picture is we've done a good job in this office. We are an effective district attorney's office. That office is professional. It is one that has integrity. It is a tough on crime office. We, for all these years, have gained a reputation that keeps criminal defendants coming out of Dallas, Fort Worth to Johnson County from coming down here. They don't want to come down here. They know they're going to face a stiff sentence when they come down here. That has been a deterrent. It continues to be a deterrent. We have been very successful in prosecuting these cases. We have, and presently we are in a death penalty case jury selection. I have prosecuted 4 of those in the past. All of those have been successful, and all of those persons have been executed. The death penalty is on the table down here. We think we have done an effective job. We think we can continue to do that job. The dedicated employees down there go forth with the zeal that's required. Now, sometimes mercy needs to be shown on a young offender. But oftentimes, if somebody has a prior record or commits a violent crime, there's going to be some time involved in it. The big picture is we do a good job. We've done a good job. We think we'd like to continue to do that.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Sure.
I've learned a lot.
Sure.
And I wish you the best of luck. Regardless of the outcome, I appreciate your service to this community and for law enforcement in general. Not everybody does that for a living.
You know, there is one thing that I neglected to mention.
Feel free, please.
Many people think that when a person goes to the penitentiary and they get paroled out of the penitentiary early, that we have something to do with that, we being the local officials. It's not true. TDC, the prison system, determines when that person gets out of prison early. We have nothing to do with it whatsoever.
Is that something that's being leveled at your office?
It is. It is. People have said that we let certain people out of the penitentiary early. We don't have anything to do with that.
I'm sure in some cases that you're very angry about that.
Oh, you know, people lash out and say things.
Well, no, about you letting somebody let it out too early. Yeah. No, as far as the criticism,
that's just part of it. But
somebody is a danger to society.
We don't agree with the early release of many of these offenders. But that's something that is done out of Austin. The Board of Pardons and Paroles controls that early release, and we don't. And many people think, well, they have something to do with when somebody gets out of the penitentiary early. We don't have one thing to do with it.
Okay.
So anyway.
Well, that's good to have that clarified.
Yeah,
because things get on social media and they get spun around a little bit.
That's just part of it.
Part of it. Well,
and but anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to be on here, and
I
hope
you enjoyed it as much as you can.
It's fine.
And like I said, I wish you the best of luck.
Appreciate that.
And I appreciate what you've done for our community in our county for 30 years.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Taylor, thanks for being here for that extra special show.
Always.
All right, and this will be on. Well, it's been on live stream with YouTube and Facebook, but it'll be on Apple and Spotify very soon.
Okay.
All right, thank you, sir. And next Monday, I got two fellow candidates, if you will. I have Dwayne Burns. I want to call him Brown.
Dwayne Burns, the state representative.
Right, I have Dwayne Burns. And then the next day I have Matthew Lucci, who's running against Roger Williams, whom I'm sure you know well, too.
Yeah, I've seen him at some, I don't know him, but...
well, you know Roger Williams, I bet.
I know Roger Williams, and I know...
Oh, you're too far from the mic, sir.
I'm sorry.
All right.
I know Roger Williams, and I've seen Lucci at some of these political events, but as far as knowing him personally, I don't.
It was a good show last time I had him, and I'm looking forward to Dwayne Burns. My personal opinion is he's getting hammered for being just your old standard Republican, but we'll find out. Let him talk about that.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, we'll just let him explain all that. So anyway, thank you all. I'll see you all Monday.
Okay.